Hey there, friends! Welcome back to English Bloom, the place where we let real English unfold naturally, the way it actually lives and breathes in everyday life. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're diving into something that trips up even the most confident speakers: real English in tricky social situations. Picture this. You're at a networking dinner in a new city. The conversation is humming along nicely until someone leans in and asks, point blank, "So, how much do you actually make?" My stomach did a little flip. I smiled, bought time with a vague, "Oh, you know how it is," and spent the next 10 minutes mentally kicking myself for not having the right phrase ready. If you've ever been there, and I suspect most of us have, you know the feeling. That split second where your brain freezes and the polished English you practice in class suddenly feels inadequate. Exactly. That's why today we're unpacking the language that actually gets you through those moments with grace, wit, and zero foot and mouth disasters. Quick personal check-in before we roll. Wherever you're listening from, maybe a quiet cafe in Phnom Penh like me right now, or a bustling commute somewhere else, if you're an advanced learner tuning in, you're exactly who this episode is for. Stick around. We're going to highlight idioms, phrasal verbs, and those subtle cultural undercurrents that turn good English into natural English. Let's start with the universal opener, breaking the ice without sounding scripted. You know the drill. You walk into a room full of strangers, and suddenly every polite "how are you" feels flat. Here's where real English shines. Instead of the generic, try something with a little personality. I have to say, the spread here is impressive. I'm already plotting which dessert to tackle first. How about you? Notice the phrasal verb tackle? It's not literal wrestling. It means to deal with something energetically. I used it once at a conference in Singapore, and the woman next to me lit up. We ended up chatting for 20 minutes about Southeast Asian street food. But what if the small talk stalls? That's when you deploy the bridge phrase. Something like, "Speaking of which, I've been dying to ask," or the slightly more formal, "That reminds me." These act like linguistic bridges. They keep momentum without forcing it. And if you're feeling bold, throw in a gentle, self-deprecating twist. "I'm terrible at small talk, but I make a mean cup of coffee. What's your secret weapon for surviving these events?" On the flip side, have you ever noticed how some cultures lean into understatement while others go straight for the jugular? British English, for instance, might respond to "How's the project going?" with "Oh, it's not entirely without its challenges." Translation, it's a complete nightmare. Americans might just say, "It's kicking my butt, honestly." Both are idiomatic, both perfectly polite, yet they reveal completely different attitudes toward vulnerability. Shifting gears now to the second tricky zone, navigating disagreements without turning them into debates that leave everyone bruised. Let's say a colleague drops a strong opinion you don't share. The temptation is to blurt out, "That's completely wrong." But real English prefers nuance. You might say, "Interesting point. I see where you're coming from, albeit from a slightly different angle." Albeit. Lovely little word, right? It means although or even though, and it softens the pivot beautifully. Or try the classic yes and technique borrowed from improv. Yes, and I've also noticed that it acknowledges without conceding. I used this once during a heated family discussion about politics back home in the States. My aunt was convinced one policy was a disaster. I thought it had merit. Instead of digging in, I said, "Yes, and I wonder if the long-term data might tell a different story." We actually listened to each other instead of shouting past one another. Small linguistic choices, big relational wins. Here's a what if for you. What if every disagreement started with genuine curiosity rather than defensiveness? "Help me understand your thinking there" suddenly turns confrontation into collaboration. It's advanced conversational jujitsu. Now, let's tackle one of the hardest skills in any language: setting boundaries politely. Saying no without sounding rude. You've been invited to yet another after-work drinks thing, but you're exhausted and you've promised yourself an early night. How do you decline without burning bridges? The magic phrase? "I'd love to, but I'm completely tied up this week." Rain check? Tied up means unavailable because of prior commitments. Rain check, that's the beautiful American idiom for let's do it another time. It leaves the door wide open. If you want to be even warmer, add a specific alternative. I'm swamped until Friday, but how about coffee next week instead? Swamped, overwhelmed with work, paints a vivid picture without oversharing. I once turned down a high-profile speaking gig because my schedule was already bursting at the seams. Instead of the curt "no thanks," I wrote, "This sounds like an incredible opportunity and I'm genuinely flattered, but I'm afraid I'd be spreading myself too thin right now. Would you be open to circling back in the fall?" The organizer replied within minutes, "Absolutely. We'll keep you in mind. Relationship preserved, integrity intact." Of course, sometimes the tricky part isn't saying no, it's hearing it. When someone else turns you down, the graceful response is simply, "No worries at all. Totally understand." It releases the tension and keeps the connection alive. We're moving into our fourth beat now, reading the room and knowing when and how to exit gracefully. You've all been in that conversation that's run its course. The other person is glancing at their phone, giving one-word answers. Instead of awkwardly lingering, you can say, "Well, I don't want to keep you. It was lovely catching up. Let's grab lunch sometime soon." The phrase, "I don't want to keep you," is pure gold. It shows consideration and gives them an easy out. Or the slightly more playful, "I should probably let you circulate before the host accuses me of monopolizing you." Self-aware humor diffuses any potential awkwardness. Here's a personal story that still makes me cringe and smile at the same time. Last year at a wedding in London, I got deep into a conversation about AI ethics with a stranger. 40 minutes later, I realized I'd been talking non-stop while he was politely nodding. I finally caught myself and said, "Goodness, I've been rabbiting on. Tell me, what brings you to this side of the pond?" He looked relieved, we laughed, and the evening turned into one of the best nights I've had in years. The idiom "rabbiting on" means talking at length, usually about something trivial or at length. British English at its finest. All right, we're heading into the home stretch. Let's pull it all together with some concrete takeaways you can start using tomorrow. First, master the bridge phrases. Speaking of which, and that reminds me, they keep conversations flowing. Second, disagreement softeners. I see where you're coming from, albeit, and yes, and I've also noticed that. Third, polite boundary setters. I'm tied up, rain check, and I'd love to, but. Fourth, graceful exits. I don't want to keep you, and light self-deprecation like I've been rabbiting on. If you're an advanced learner, here's a little challenge for you this week. Pick one tricky social situation you usually dread, maybe a networking event or a difficult conversation at work, and deliberately use 2 of these phrases. Notice how the energy shifts. I'd love to hear how it goes. Drop a voice note, send an email, or leave a comment wherever you listen. Share your English story. Those are the moments that make this podcast feel like a real conversation. One last what if before we wrap? What if mastering these micro moments didn't just improve your English, but actually made you a more empathetic, confident human being? Because that's the beautiful secret. Language isn't just about sounding smart, it's about connecting more deeply. That's it for today's episode of English Bloom. If this resonated, hit that subscribe button, share it with a fellow learner who's ready to level up their real-world English, and join us next time when we explore the hidden poetry of everyday English, metaphors we live by without even noticing. Until then, keep blooming. Keep speaking with courage, curiosity, and that wonderful mix of precision and heart. This is Alex signing off. Take care, friends.